You replay it again tonight. The argument from years ago. The thing your coworker said. The betrayal you swore you forgot. It comes back uninvited, sharp as the day it happened. You tell yourself to move on. You can't. But the real answer is far stranger than weak willpower or a bad memory. Your brain is not malfunctioning when it does this. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. Think about the last time you felt wronged. Maybe small, maybe huge. Did the memory fade quickly or did it sharpen with time? For most people, it sharpens. The details get clearer. The emotion gets stronger. That is not an accident. Tens of thousands of years ago, your ancestors lived in small groups. Survival depended on cooperation, sharing food, defending each other, trusting your neighbor not to steal your portion while you slept. In a world like that, a person who cheated you once was a walking risk. Forgetting that risk could cost you everything. So evolution built a system, a grudge system, a part of your brain designed to flag betrayal, store it permanently, and replay it whenever that person showed up again. Not to make you suffer, to protect you. Researchers call this negativity bias. Psychologist Roy Baumeister and his colleagues found that bad experiences affect us far more powerfully than good ones, even when they are equal in size. A single insult can outweigh a dozen compliments. One betrayal can erase years of trust. Your brain isn't being dramatic. It's being efficient. In an environment where one mistake could mean death, the cost of underreacting to danger was always higher than the cost of overreacting. But here's where it gets strange. Your brain doesn't just remember the bad event. It rehearses it. Have you ever noticed that the angrier you feel about something, the more you think about it? That's not coincidence. That's the mechanism working as designed. Neuroscientist Daniel Schachter, who has spent decades studying memory, describes how emotionally charged memories get prioritized for storage and retrieval. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, tags the memory as important. And important memories get replayed, again and again, like a security system testing its own alarm. This replaying serves a purpose your ancestors needed. Picture a hunter-gatherer named, for simplicity, your great-great-great-grandmother. Someone in her group steals her share of meat. If she forgets by morning, it happens again and again. But if she replays it, if she feels that sting every time she sees that person, she remembers to keep her guard up. She protects her resources. She protects her children. Multiply that across thousands of generations. The people who held grudges survived better than the people who didn't. And so, here you are, carrying a brain built by ancestors who needed to remember every wrong, because forgetting could mean starving. Now ask yourself something. Does your modern grudge actually protect you the way it protected them? Probably not. The coworker who took credit for your idea isn't going to steal your food supply. The friend who canceled on you 3 times isn't a threat to your children's survival. But your brain doesn't know the difference. It runs the same ancient software on completely different hardware. This is where the twist comes in. You'd expect that holding on to anger would, at minimum, feel satisfying. Like justice. Like protection. But here's what actually happens inside your body when you nurse a grudge. Stanford researcher Carsten Roche and colleagues studied what chronic anger and resentment do to physical health over time. The findings were not subtle. People who held onto grudges showed elevated cortisol levels, the stress hormone, for extended periods. Their blood pressure stayed higher. Their immune systems showed signs of being chronically activated. The same kind of low-grade inflammation linked to heart disease and other long-term health problems. In other words, the system designed to protect you from a one-time threat 10,000 years ago is now quietly working against you every single day for a threat that may have happened once, years ago, and never again. Your ancestors' grudges had an expiration date built in. The threat was usually resolved one way or another. The person left the group, or trust was rebuilt through repeated cooperation, or the conflict ended in a single dramatic event, and then it was over. But modern life doesn't offer those resolutions as often. You might never see that person again, yet the memory stays active in your head, looping as if the threat is still ongoing. Your brain keeps the alarm running because, as far as it's concerned, the danger was never neutralized. There was no resolution, no closure, just an open file, sitting there, draining resources. Here's another strange piece. Why does the memory get more vivid over time instead of fading like other memories do? This connects to something called rumination, studied extensively by psychologist Susan Nolan-Hoeksema. She found that repeatedly thinking about a negative event doesn't process it or resolve it. It actually strengthens the neural pathway associated with that memory. Every time you replay the argument in your head, you are, in a very real sense, re-recording it, making it more permanent, more accessible, more likely to surface again tomorrow. So the very act of trying to think it through, to understand why someone hurt you, to imagine what you should have said, can make the memory stronger, not weaker. The grudge feeds itself. Think about how often you've caught yourself rehearsing a comeback to an argument that ended months ago. The argument is over. The other person has probably forgotten it entirely, but you're still in the ring, still throwing punches at someone who left a long time ago. This is the modern mirror of an ancient system. Your brain treats unresolved social conflict the same way it would treat an unresolved physical threat, like a predator that might still be nearby. It keeps you vigilant. It keeps you scanning. It keeps the story alive because, evolutionarily speaking, staying alert to a known threat was always safer than relaxing too soon. But you are not living in that world anymore. The threat is a memory. The predator left long ago. And the vigilance that once kept your ancestors alive is now just keeping you up at night. So what do you do with a brain that's running outdated software? Some researchers point to a surprising answer. The goal isn't to suppress the grudge or pretend it doesn't matter. Suppression tends to backfire, making intrusive thoughts come back stronger. Instead, what seems to work is giving the brain what it's actually looking for. Resolution. Not necessarily reconciliation with the other person, but a sense of closure within yourself. Writing the story down. Reframing what happened. Deciding consciously that the threat has passed. When that happens, something interesting occurs. The memory doesn't disappear, but it stops being rehearsed as urgent. It moves from an active file to an archived one. The alarm stops ringing, not because the event changed, but because your brain finally got the signal that it's safe to stand down. Here's the part that should change how you see every grudge you're currently carrying. That grievance that keeps surfacing? It's not a sign that you're petty or weak or unable to move on. It's a sign that a system millions of years old is doing exactly what it evolved to do. Protect you from a world that no longer exists. Tonight, when that old argument creeps back into your mind, you won't just feel annoyed by it. You'll recognize it for what it actually is. A guard who's still standing at a gate that was torn down long ago, waiting for an order to stand down that never came. And maybe, now that you know that, you can be the one to finally give it.
वीडियोस बनाने हैं, फिल्मोरा है ना।